Ivara, the Huntress, the Thief. Equipped with a diverse selection of arrows, deft hands, shroud of stealth, and an exalted bow. The crafted Ivara infiltrates the hostile territory with deception and diversion, and eliminates threats with a shot from beyond. You know, Ivara really surprised me. I was expecting her to be this DPS Warframe that's just focused on her bow and be pretty boring, but she turned out to be so much more than that. So let's take a look at her, shall we? So first things first, to build Ivara, you will first have to farm spy missions for her parts. So tier 1 spy missions, which are level 1 to 15, will reward you with her systems. Tier 2 spy missions, which are level 16 to 25, will reward you with her chassis. And tier 3 spy missions, which are level 26 and above, will reward you with her helmet and her blueprint. Now, Ivara is very squishy. She only has 75 health, which goes up to 225 at rank 30, 100 shields, which go up to 300 at rank 30, only 65 armor, and 175 power, which goes up to 262.5 at rank 30. She also has a sprint speed of 1.15, which is above average, and she has 3 polarities: a D, a dash, and an additional dash in the aura slot. Luckily though, her abilities allow her to control the battlefield, deal high amounts of damage very quickly, and stay in stealth for extended periods of time, which negates her squishiness. Right now, Ivara doesn't have any augments, but I'm pretty sure DE will create some, so once they do, I will make separate videos for them and I will link them in the description. So let's start off with her passive ability, which is called Sentry, and it's essentially enemy radar. Enemies within 20 meters will be displayed on the minimap, and this does stack with Animal Instinct, Enemy Radar, Enemy Sense, and Stealth Drift. So Ivara's first ability is called Quiver, and it's actually 4 abilities in one. Ivara has a selection of special arrows that you can cycle through by hitting the ability button, and you can shoot them individually by holding the button down. The first one is called Cloak Arrow, which upon impact will create a bubble that will cloak Ivara and her allies within 2.5 meters for 12 seconds. You can have a maximum of 3 stealth bubbles up at any given time, and if you fire a 4th one, it will simply replace the first one. The duration is affected by power duration, the radius is affected by power range, and it can stick to surfaces, allies, and enemies. The second one is called Dashwire Arrow, which upon firing will deploy a zipline that can be up to 100 meters long. And this works like a regular zipline. You can jump onto it by pressing the use button, you can fire from it, you can walk on it, and you can even create additional ziplines from it. Now the maximum angle at which you can create a zipline is 40 degrees from the horizon, so you can't make them too steep. The maximum length of zipline is not affected by power range, so it's always locked at 100 meters, which is not a big issue because there are very few rooms that are larger than that. And finally, you can only have 4 ziplines at any given time. However, if you fire a zipline and stand on top of it, you can create 4 additional ziplines, so in total you can have 5, but as soon as you jump off from the first one, it will disappear. And finally, this arrow is replaced by null-shield arrow in the Conclave, which will just drain enemy shields within 5 meters of the impact and will prevent shield regeneration for 4 seconds. The third one is called the noise arrow, where upon impact it will emit a high-pitched sound and it will alert enemies within 20 meters. Firing the arrow doesn't cause the enemies to become alerted and run up to the arrow. They will simply walk up to it and just look at it and go, interesting, and just stand there. And it can be pretty funny because you can use them as sort of breadcrumbs and just fire more of them as you go through the level, and enemies will keep following them in the order you fired them in. And as you go through the mission, you will just get more and more enemies following your breadcrumbs. And of course, the range of the high-pitched sound is affected by power range. Now, the noise arrow is replaced by encumbered arrow in Conclave. Now, I ran around in Conclave for a bit and shot enemies with the encumbered arrow, and it didn't really seem to do anything, so I don't know if it's bugged or I'm just a derp and I don't know what it's supposed to do. But it sounds like it should slow enemies down, but then again, I didn't get it to work. And the final arrow you can fire from the quiver is called Sleep Arrow, which will put enemies within 6 meters of its impact point into deep sleep for 10 seconds. Now, the enemies will wake up if more than 50% of their current health is removed. And this is unfortunately unmoddable, so you cannot increase the health threshold by using power strength mods. But you can increase the sleep duration by adding more power duration, and you can increase the radius of the sleep effect by adding more power range. And this is really good in combination with the noise arrow. You can bring a bunch of enemies in with the noise arrow, put them to sleep with sleep arrow, and then either kill them with your weapon or by using finishers on them. Ivara's second ability is called Navigator, where you can take control of one of your projectiles and fly it around. Now, this is the only clip that I'm going to show you from, me using Navigator, because the footage I got, I have a feeling someone will get a seizure from it, because if you want to hit enemies, you have to turn very quickly, and it's just very unpleasant to watch. Now, you can either speed the projectile up by holding down the fire button, or slow it down by holding the aim down sights button. And you control the projectile by simply looking around. Now, if you're worried about taking a lot of damage while you're controlling your arrow, you don't have to be, because Ivara will be invisible for the entire duration. Now, as you're flying the projectile around, its damage will be increased by 100% every second, up to a grand total of 500% bonus damage. And this can of course be increased by using power strength mods. And the speed of the damage increase is affected by power duration. And if you have multi-shot on the weapon, which you will most likely have, it will randomly pick one of the projectiles. And if you have punch through on the weapon, you can simply fly through the enemies without losing the projectile, which will, as you may expect, kill the enemy in the process. Now, when you take control of a projectile, it will cost you a little bit of energy, and after that, as it's flying around, it will cost 3 energy per second if it's just in free flight, and it will drain 5 energy per second if you start steering it. The initial cost is affected by power efficiency, and the energy drain is affected by both efficiency and duration. And finally, you can use this with arrows from either your quiver or Artemis Bow. Ivara's third ability is called Prowl, where Ivara activates her cloak, rendering her invisible to enemies. While you're in Prowl, you will get 40% bonus damage on headshots, but you will have reduced movement speed. And the headshot multiplier is affected by power strength, so if you have more power strength, you're going to do more damage on headshots. And your cloak will deactivate if you try to sprint or slide. However, your cloak will not deactivate if you roll or jump. So if you time it correctly and you jump and roll at the same time, you can actually move around fairly quickly. And if you jump onto a zipline, whether it be a regular zipline or zipline created with your dash wire arrow, you will not have reduced movement speed. Now, while prowling around, Ivara also becomes capable of pickpocketing enemies. So if you stand close enough to an enemy, a ray of light will shine on that enemy and you will steal loot from them. And the pickpocketing portion of this ability is basically an ability on its own, because the time it takes to steal from an enemy is affected by duration, the range at which you can steal from enemies is affected by power range, and the chance of getting a drop is affected by power strength up to 100%. Going above 100% power strength doesn't increase your chance of getting additional loot, but going below 100% power strength will. And with 100% power strength, you will get 100% chance to get an additional loot roll from that enemy, which doesn't mean that you're gonna get an item 100% of the time, it just means that you get an additional loot roll just like when you kill the enemy. And each enemy can only be pickpocketed once. Now, the energy drain for this ability is pretty complicated, so it will drain 1 energy per second if you're standing still, and 3 energy per second while you're walking. Additionally, if you perform a melee attack, it will cost 2 energy, and taking damage will cost 10 energy. The activation cost, the regular drain, and the drain from attacking or taking damage are all affected by power efficiency, and the regular drain is affected by power duration. Now, firing a loud weapon, so a weapon that is classified as alarmingly loud, will temporarily break the cloak, and Ivara will recloak shortly after firing the weapon. And the speed at which you recloak is affected by the weapon's fire rate. Firing a silent weapon or reducing the noise of an alarmingly loud weapon by either using hush or suppress will not break cloak when fired. And when you fire a loud weapon and the cloak will deactivate, it will still be technically active and it will drain energy. And while you have Prowl active, you can only replenish energy from energy orbs. You cannot replenish energy by using Team Energy Restores, Energy Siphon, Rift Plane, Energy Vampire, or even the Zenuric passive ability. And while this may seem like a bit of an issue, it's not, because you can steal energy orbs from enemies. And Ivara's fourth and final ability is called Artemis Bow, where Ivara will pull out her exalted bow as her primary weapon, allowing her to fire a spread of 7 arrows. Now, the mechanics on Artemis Bow are very different to regular bows, because with regular bows, as you pull the string back more and more, you're gonna get more damage, more punch through, and lovely stuff like that. But with the Artemis Bow, even if you simply tap the attack button, it will still do full damage, But what changes is the orientation at which you shoot the line of arrows. So if you simply tap the attack button, you will still do full damage, but the line of arrows will be fired in a vertical line. And if you hold it down all the way, it will be fired in a horizontal line. And if you're somewhere in between, the line will be tilted based on how long you've held down the button for. Which is indeed an awesome mechanic. Now each arrow will do 160 base damage, which is further increased by a 1.5 times damage multiplier, and each arrow has a 20% status chance, 25% critical strike chance, and 200% critical multiplier. The damage distribution is 14% impact, 80% puncture, and 6% slash. Now the damage of Artemis Bow is affected by power strength and a bunch of mods. So base mods like rifle amp work, physical damage mods, elemental mods, fire rate increases the speed at which you pull the string, multi-shot, punch through, critical damage, critical strike chance, and status chance mods all work. But weapon augments, class-specific mods like assault rifle mods, shotgun mods, and sniper mods, as well as the stats on the weapon, don't affect Artemis Bow. And one thing that I almost forgot to mention is that each arrow has an 8 punch through. Now Artemis Bow doesn't have energy drain, but it will consume 15 energy per shot, which is of course affected by power efficiency. Now while you have Artemis Bow out, you cannot replenish energy from Trinity's Energy Vampire and Team Energy Restores, but you can replenish energy from Energy Siphon, Energy Orbs, and the Zanuric Energy Overflow passive ability, which makes this ability awesome if you're running the Zanuric Focus School. And finally, you cannot use melee attacks while you have Artemis Bow out, and using the secondary fire button, which on PC at least is the middle mouse button, will fire the current arrow you have selected in your quiver, which will of course cost the appropriate amount of energy. And the initial activation cost of Artemis Bow and the amount of energy it takes per shot are both affected by power efficiency. Now, as I've said in the beginning, I didn't expect much from Ivara. I wasn't very excited for her when they announced her, but oh my goodness did she surprise me. You can do some seriously ridiculous stuff with her. I mean, one guy took Ivara and did, I don't know, like a 6-hour Void run. He basically ran Void Survival to a point where the game broke. And he had no problems whatsoever. He could have gone for much, much longer. And personally, I ran 1-hour-long survivals on series without cover lethality, and I was still doing fine. The thing that killed me was my own radiation damage. And on top of that, Quiver is such an amazing ability, whether it be cloak arrows to help your allies or to restore energy, dash wire arrows to create your own damn ziplines or to lure enemies, put them to sleep. It's such an amazing ability that gives you so much utility. And I love that DE are now expanding on this idea with Vauban's second ability. It's just amazing. And while Navigator may not seem like the most useful ability in the game, if you combine it with Prowl and the bonus headshot damage, and you fly it around for that 500% bonus damage, you can do some serious damage if you manage to hit a headshot with it. And Artemis Bow, what can I say? It's an exalted ability that does ridiculous damage and just shreds even sentience. She may be a bit of a ball ache to get, especially if you're terrible at spy missions like me, but she is definitely worth it. Go and get Ivara, you will not regret it, okay? And that's basically it for the video, so I thank you very much for watching, as always, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.